Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Leadership Adventure. I'm really excited to finally talk to Sheryl, Raphael, Whitaker. Sheryl, I've been looking forward to this conversation so much because I think that the business world really needs to hear from you.
Oh, thank
Sheryl
you.
has been a senior executive. She's been an executive for 20 years in the talent development, leadership development space in financial services mainly. And Sheryl, I've really enjoyed reading about your background and some of the conversations that we've had in the past about your approach to leadership development. And I'd really love to start by asking you what you think is important for leaders to be thinking about in today's shifting world of business, because everything is changing so much faster
Mm.
than
Oh,
before.
yes. Oh, yes. So much to think about. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while now, so I'm really excited to sit down and spend some time with you today talking about this world that I know both you and I really, really love. And so, yeah, it is an absolutely crazy and busy time for all of us who are in this space, whether you are a leader or you are being led. And one of the things that I'm extremely passionate about, and something that I think that all leaders need to be thinking about right now, is what I call the human future of work. I am working with a couple of professors from Columbia University and a slew of talent leaders right now. We're really hyper focused on this because with AI and all of the different things that are going on in our world right now, it is, and then coming out of the pandemic, which seems to be a million years behind us, one of the things that's important for us to focus on right now is the human being, because regardless of robots coming and AI and all that amazing stuff that's a part of our present and our future, at the end of the day, there are still human beings that are making this world go.
And as far as the needs that you feel people really have right now, what's your take on that?
Needs, they need to be seen. We are really hyper focused on outcomes, metrics, KPIs, the data, results. And it's just important that as leaders, we also recognize that there are people who are helping to make that happen. And so, if as leaders, we can focus on ourselves and what we need to show up as our best selves as human beings, then we'll be there and we'll be able to do that for those who, well, I like to say, for those who are in our care. And then that just snowballs into better results. And then the organization gets ultimately what they need.
And how do you handle that for larger organizations? Because I know that some of the organizations you've worked with have been really big. And so you've had
Yeah.
to look, oversee as a vice president, 46,000, 50,000 people at times. Just thinking about these larger numbers sounds, a bit intimidating for some of us, right? And
Yeah.
thinking about how you handle talent development, how do you handle investment in talent development for that large number? What are your thoughts about that?
Oh my gosh. So it is, at first it seems as if working with larger organizations with those larger employee bases can be more challenging. And and realistically, it's just interesting because I'm just thinking about my experience. One large organization I worked for was AIG, and there were complications there and complexities because not just because of the size of the organization, but because of where we were, right? I mean, I was working with many different countries, many different languages, different time zones, different expectations, different laws and regulations, translation, so there were a lot of different complexities there that I didn't have to address in my last role when I was head of enterprise learning for USAA, which is primarily a domestic organization, didn't have to handle any of those different kind of challenges that I had at AIG. But ultimately, even though those two organizations were big and very different, ultimately you're still dealing with large employee bases. And with that in mind, honestly, even in comparison to smaller organizations, a lot of the work is the same. You're still thinking about the cost of learning per employee. You're still thinking about engaging leadership and getting their buy-in and their green light on the type of work that you're trying to accomplish, getting them to really be on your side as opposed to against, right? Like helping them to see what the value is in learning and developing your talent. So you still have to deal with that. You still have to deal with budget constraints. You still have to deal with time and everybody thinking that learning is a great idea until it's actually time to do it and making the time to get it done. So the challenges really are the same. It just seems more intimidating when you're thinking about those bigger numbers, but realistically, it's the same.
Okay. I was thinking about, like the type of delivery that you can have. I remember working for some of these larger companies, and when I was onboarded, it was all e-learning, and I just really had a hard time getting through all of it and getting it all to sink in all at once. And this is one of the things that I thought, like, is this really effective in terms of retention? And I know that's one of the challenges. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, you're talking about retention, or like retaining the knowledge once once all is said and done. You're just bringing me back because I remember I started learning a long time ago. A long time ago. And I remember at that time where everything was stand up, right? Everything was facilitated. And I worked at AIG at a time when we were making big changes to go from stand up to e-learning for everything. And then just getting leadership on board, because they were so used to, if they needed training in Singapore, you would put someone on a plane and they would fly to Singapore in order to get it done. And even now, post-COVID, with the return to office and all that focus there is still, I think for most organizations, this pull to bring people together and to learn. And so I think that now using e-learning, it's brilliant, but it's not the be all to end all. We know that, the 70-20-10 still giving opportunities for folks to be in it and to like feel it and touch it, and then come together and learn together, and then go out and do that 10% with the e-learning and other types of articles and videos and all that kind of stuff. We know that there's a circle there that needs, in order for that individual, that learner, to really, complete their learning to affect real behavior change.
Yeah, because, I think that what you're saying as well is really leading to the next question, is what do you see as effective leadership development today? What really works for truly having that opportunity to implement the learning and to have it be useful?
Yeah, I mean, when you're a leader, you're in a great position to actually engage with what you're learning. I think what happens though at times, and I'm just going back to old school leadership development, which for some people is still what they're sitting in today, is, hey, we're going to put together this great experience for our leaders, and they're going to come in and they're going to learn, and they're going to be motivated, and they're going to be inspired. And when they go out afterwards, after this awesome experience, they're going to be great leaders and just going to kill it. And then what usually happens is you go and you have this great experience, and you think about it, you make an action plan, and you've got your accountability partner who is sitting next to you in the workshop, and you're going to go out there, and then what happens? It's like it's a fire.
You get busy.
Yeah, you get busy, and then it's a fire that's lit for like a day or two, if you're lucky, a week, and then it's back into, into like the old hat again, and you're starting from fresh. And then folks will say that, oh, leadership development doesn't work. So I'm a true believer that we do have to find ways to embed development in the flow of work, giving our leaders an opportunity to try, reflect, do, learn, make mistakes, come back, reflect more, learn, do, in order for them to become the leaders that we're expecting them to be. That takes more time, which nobody has time for, but ultimately, if you're looking for change, if you're looking to move the needle, and you're truly looking to invest in your leaders, then it has to be more than just a one-time event or a quarterly event.
Yeah, and when, if you have limited budget, for example, and you have difficult decisions about where you're going to invest in the company, what do you think is the most effective form in terms of that regular reflection, etc.? What kind of things
Yeah.
need to be implemented?
Oh, I love leaders as teachers. That is like, to me, that it's, so it's kind of like putting your money where your mouth is, because we do have, every organization has amazing leaders who do it right and have something to say and something that they want to give back to those who are either coming after them, or even sitting side by side. Peer coaching is also highly effective. And so I've seen in my own experience, going back a little bit now, that when you ask leaders to show up for other leaders, it is really impactful. And it could be as simple as a book club. It doesn't really matter, because what happens is when you get leaders in a room learning from each other, that's where true magic can happen. We're not talking about mentorship. We're not talking about sponsorship. We're talking about leaders helping leaders to learn from their own experiences and from each other.
So reflecting on their experiences and challenges?
Yeah, reflecting on their experiences and challenges. Even if you put together something that is more structured and give leaders an opportunity to get in the room with each other. So in my past life, we had something called skill circles, and it kind of goes back to what I was talking to you before about the 70-20-10. And these skill circles were led by leaders. I think they're still doing it today. I hope they are. It's led by leaders within the business. There's a particular skill that they're looking to develop. There's content that's out there on name your platform here. And this cohort of learners, leaders get together. They have sort of like a learning path of things they need to do on their own. They come into this skill circle, this time together, and they share their experiences. They talk about their fears, what's working, what's not working. They talk about what they've learned. They get clarification, and it's being facilitated by a leader who is comfortable with that skill, that particular skill. And they're kind of like, they're brain thinking. They're kind of like the, what's that word? Think tank. They're having like a think tank together, or it's more like a learning tank. And then they're going, so that's a 20. They already got the 10. And then they're going out back into their world, putting in practice, putting into place the things that they learned and they talked about, trying things out. And then they come back in again, and it's kind of, it's a cycle. And the result was that those who were participating in that circle, now they can bubble out and they can pay it forward. And now they can go out and facilitate and teach others, what they have learned.
How often did those skill circles take place?
They were ongoing. We started small, started with a group in underwriting when we first let it, put it out there. And it was about storytelling with data, because a lot of these analysts knew their information, right? And it would go out in front of these executives and they're like, okay, boom, here are the numbers, here are the metrics, all that kind of jazz. And then the leaders were looking at them like, okay, I'm blurry eyed because all I'm seeing is numbers on a screen, on a slide. Tell me what's the story? Like, what does this mean? And so they were just kind of like, well, perplexed. And so they had to come back in and figure out how do I go about telling a story so that so that these leaders could understand what this data is trying to tell them. And so it started small, but then it's just started to grow and grow and grow. And now I'd have to check back with my sources, but they're doing on a pretty regular basis, and they're using other skills as well to make a difference.
I'd love to hear more about that, because this is, definitely one of the most common challenges that I hear. The HR leaders that I've coached, they all tell me they would love to have more influence. They don't feel like they have enough of a say, and perhaps that is part of how they are communicating the story, or the way that information is conveyed. And that's often one of the things that we've worked on. So from your perspective, what's really the most important thing? Is it case studies? What is going to really convince an executive to invest in that?
I'm laughing because I'm thinking like, you have to help them to realize that it's their idea. So
okay, how do you do that?
Well, because a lot of times what happens in HR, and I mean, like, I'm HR do or die. But a lot of times what happens in HR is that we'll like kind of do it to them. Like, we know what's best for you. Here's how we're HR and we're here to help. This is what you need. This is how we're laying it out for you, and you're going to do it.
I see.
And then the executive on the business side says, yeah, right, like a doctor. But an executive is like, okay, so you don't understand my business. You don't understand how busy we are. You just, as an HR person, you don't get it. Because if you did get it, then you would not be suggesting to me this plan, because that plan is based upon what you know, what you think you know, and is not based in reality. And so my advice is you have to be in the business. You have to be side by side and the trusted partner. That's why when HR business partners were born, it was a beautiful thing, because I remember being in HR at a time when it was just kind of like, we need to have a seat at the table. How do we get a seat at the table? We want to be there. We want to sit side by side. But now that we have that seat, we've got to take care of it. We've got to take care of it. And that word partner is really, really important. So whether it's an HR business partner or it's a talent partner, someone has to be seen as not an equal, but someone who is there to listen, who's there to understand, and who is there to help the business along the way, so that ultimately everybody wins. I know from my experience, the best outcomes always came when the business and I, or any of the consultants I had that were working with me, when we were able to come together as a team in order to figure out a challenge or a problem.
Awesome. And, for those HR leaders who don't have that seat yet, is there any way that you think that they can get that influence?
They have to make the time and build relationships. There's nothing new here, right? This is, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning when I was talking about the human future of work. We have to get back to relationships and relating to people on like a human level. I feel like we've just gotten away from that, especially since getting back to work.
Yeah. And that's one of the gaps that I've seen all throughout my 12 years of coaching as well, is that that is where the investment has been worthwhile to build influence, no matter what the role is. So for the HR leaders I've worked with, engineering leaders, all of those roles have benefited from strengthening their relationships because of what you mentioned, that need to be seen. So That's interesting because it really highlights for me that no matter what the role is, executives also have that need to be seen, just
Yes.
like anybody else. And I think that that's something that is forgotten because often that sense of feeling like you don't know how to behave in front of an executive. That's the sense that I get from people. They don't really know what to say or what to do. There can be a sense of nerves that
Oh boy,
can
you're
come
talking about imposter syndrome a little bit there, right?
Yeah.
If
Have
you
you
are
ever been
feeling
in that
like,
room?
yeah, well, you just feel like you're not. I mean, I say you should never be the smartest person in the room, right? If you're the smartest person in the room, I always say find a different room, find a new room.
Mm.
But that being said, of course, throughout my career, I've had moments where I will walk into a room or a Zoom and just looking around. And then I have to remind myself, okay, these are people just like I'm a person. They have their own doubts and insecurities, just like I do. Relate to people and treat them the way you want to be treated. And then we can have a conversation. I remember when I was at USAA and I was asked to reimagine our new employee onboarding. And that was a huge ask because at that organization, every single person who is new goes through 3 days of what we call NEO, which was now called New Eagle Onboarding. And it is beloved. It is loved. It doesn't matter whether you are a new CHRO or if you're going to be a guard working and keeping everybody secure on premises. Everybody sits down shoulder to shoulder every single week and goes through this program. It is massive. People travel for it. It's a big, big thing. And so I remember having to work with a team and figure out how to make this already amazing thing better and then present it to the CEO. They have a new CEO now who just came in April, but the CEO who spent over 30 something years of his career at that organization already loved it as it was, and then helped convince him that it needed to be different. And it was a really intimate conversation. It was myself, the CHRO, the CEO, and my boss at the time. And I went in there with an infographic because everyone was like, okay, when you're going to present to CEO, you need graphs and charts and slides and pre-reads and all this kind of stuff. And I went in there and you know what, how would I want this information presented to me? Simple, direct, on point, easy to consume, and easy for him to make a decision as a yes or no. So I went in there with an infographic that laid out the case for change, talked about what those changes were going to be, what the outcome was going to be, the ask, the timeline. And it was one of the best leadership meetings I had ever been in. And it was really, really high stakes. And I made it easy for him to say yes. Now, there were some things that he said no to. I expected those no's, and that was okay. But really, at the end of the day, at the end of that meeting, we all walked away feeling good and ready to make a difference for that organization. And it was because I just decided to treat him the way I wanted to be treated.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not rocket
interesting.
science.
I do think a lot of the time people just get wrapped up in their heads, with all these worries that could happen or what they're going to be thinking of them, right? And so that's one of the things I've seen, that often it's being able to strip down that worry about what perception other people will have, and just really think about what is the best way to get this across, and put ourselves in the other person's shoes. What would we want to
Yeah.
hear,
Yeah,
right?
and you also need that support though, right? Because if my boss at the time and the CHRO, if they weren't feeling as comfortable as I was, they would have been like, oh, okay, so this girl, you have no idea what you're doing. You think you're going to go in to see the CEO of USAA with an infographic to change our beloved Neo? are you crazy? Get back to work and bring me a deck. But they didn't. They were just kind of like, you know what? This has everything that we need. And he's so used to information being presented to him in the same way every single day in, day out. This will be a refreshing change for him. Let's go for it. What's the worst thing
Right.
that can happen? Nobody dies.
So it sounds like you had their trust already, right? Those
I had their
relationships
trust.
allowed
Yes.
that to
Right.
be
Yep.
effective.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So had their trust as well. Super important.
And Sheryl, now I know you're also now the founder and CEO of EdenAnthony Elite Talent Solutions. How did that
Yes.
come about? Tell me about this huge step that you decided to take.
Oh my goodness. Sometimes if you don't make plans, then the world plans for you. So I honestly was not expecting to be out here on my own, running my own business. I was completely comfortable in my corporate life, helping and building up my team, helping an organization thrive. Loved every single minute of it. But then, as you and I know, life does some life things sometimes. And there were changes in leadership that led to more changes in leadership that led to a different direction. And I found myself at a crossroads, need to make a decision if I was going to continue on with the organization or leave. And I made it was a really, really hard decision for me, because being in corporate is that's all that I've ever known.
Mm.
But I just decided I just loved myself more, and I had to make a decision that was right for me. And so I decided to move on. And then that's when things got really like exciting and hard at the same time, because in all honesty, I was devastated because I didn't know what was going to be next for me, and wasn't sure if I was going to say, okay, at this time in my life, it's now or never, do your own thing, or if I was going to just get back into what I've already, my normal, which is going to another organization and make a difference there. I'm known for transforming, and now this was a chance for me to transform myself. And it was a very uncomfortable place to be. I had to work really hard on getting my heart and my head in alignment. And it took me a few months, honestly, to make a final decision that, you know what, I didn't want to have any regrets, and had to think about what would I do if I wasn't afraid. And I
Mm.
realized, honestly, if I wasn't afraid, I would go out there and hang a shingle and do stuff on my own. But what's really weird though is that what I thought I was going to be doing, what my business was going to be about even a year ago, and what it is about now is completely different. Like I thought I would stand up my organization and I would focus purely on consulting
Mm-hmm.
and going into organizations and doing what I did for, as an internal employee, doing it for organizations who couldn't afford to have a full team or a leader at the helm. And yes, that's absolutely still what I do. What I wasn't expecting, and you and I have talked about this in the past, I wasn't expecting to fall in love with coaching. Coaching was going to be, you want fries with that? It was going to be like a side thing, something I could offer in addition to all the stuff that I do. And then I realized as I started to get into it that coaching externally is completely different. It's a totally different experience than internally. And so being an executive coach is something that really fuels me. There are a lot of leaders out there who need what you and I can offer them, helping them to, what I like to say is, come home to themselves and help them to be better leaders. And it's just like seeing the light bulbs go off with clients is just, I don't know, it's just, I'm probably getting completely off base with your question right now, but it's just, I'm
No,
just so
no.
excited about the work that we're doing at EdenAnthony. So it's just evolved over time, and it's continuing to evolve.
I was really actually just wanting to say, well, what is it that made you fall in love with coaching? Tell me a little bit more about that. What was the experience
Oh
like?
yeah. Yeah, it's It's the same reason why I fell in love with learning a long time ago. I was a leader on the business side for many years, working in claims. I was in claims leadership at various levels. And it was only when I had an opportunity to get involved in some training, because a coworker, a colleague of mine, had to go out on a medical leave. She's okay. But I ended up taking over the claims training aspect of this role for a bit of time, and I fell in love with it. And I ended up eventually taking a demotion 2 steps back to get into learning, all because I absolutely loved watching a transformation happen, watching someone not know or understand something today, and then through us working together, moving on and being better tomorrow, seeing like the light bulb go off, those aha moments happen, the transformation happening. And so, and it happened as I'm coaching internally, it happened to some degree. But now I'm like, I'm so free. Like I can really, there's no company line that needs to be told. I can tell you, and help you, guide you through questions and experiences and reflection. I can help you get to where you said you want to go. And it is powerful. It is a powerful, powerful thing. So that helper inside of me, that person who loves people,
Mhm.
it's ignited by my ability to help them see themselves in a different way.
Yeah, it's interesting because to me, it was one of the most energizing type of conversations that I had ever experienced. And I really thought that it's so powerful that I wanted to bring it more into workplaces. And I wanted more people to have the opportunity to experience coaching. So this is one of the things that I was curious about is how to make this available to more people. How is it
Mm-hmm.
that companies can provide that to more people? Or, of course, for those that are able to invest in themselves, I highly encourage anyone that has that capacity because it is something that's also a professional development expense that you can write off on your taxes, which I think a lot of people
Yes,
don't know about.
yes,
So
it's very, very true.
I
Very true.
think, for especially for women executives, because I often coach a lot of male executives still, because there are
Okay.
still more male executives out there in the world. So especially when I'm coaching in Asia or, countries where there's not as much equality currently, I end up coaching with a lot of males. And I really have been encouraging women to invest in themselves if they don't have those opportunities through their workplace,
Yes.
because I think that that is a huge difference in the opportunities that are given to men and women in leadership. Um, but I'm curious
Yeah,
if you
it's
have
quite
any
true.
thoughts around, the budget that goes towards coaching in companies, what your take is in terms of how executives view coaching. Do they view it in such a powerful way as we do or not?
Well, all right. I'm gonna put my old executive hat on. And I remember a time when we were taking a look at the variety of different platforms that are out there because we recognized as a leadership team, a talent development leadership team, that we needed to find a way to scale. We understood the benefit of coaching. And then we also understood that we needed to find a way that was more affordable to do so. And it was, so I decided to be part of like the pilot, and spend some time with a coach. And that was the very first time that I had a coach. I mean, I've been coached all my life and coached others, but the first time I had like, I am a coach and I'm going to coach you. And it was a cool experience. And I wanted to dig deeper with this person. It just piqued my curiosity, the questioning, the self realization. Never any advice, which was something we could talk about, but it was a positive experience, And it wasn't one of those things where, like, no one ever said to me, hey, Sheryl, as you are advancing in your career as a leader, you could benefit from having an executive coach. It just wasn't part of the speak. And I think that's something that needs to change. I was just having a conversation with one of my clients the other day, and she had mentioned that very same thing to me, because it never occurred to her until she saw a post of mine on LinkedIn that a coach can actually help her in her career, whatever that is that you're trying to do, whether you are, staying put, whether you're trying to move on, whether you're just trying to be, better at what you do. Um, it just needs to become part of the language when we talk about how leaders are, how they're developed.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that for you, it's a sense of coming home. Tell me more about how you see that.
Oh, I talk about coming home to yourself, because and coaching, being coached is hard. It is
Okay.
hard, right? They say all good coaches, all great coaches have coaches. And so I'm working with a coach right now, and it is like, I feel like through the questioning and the self-reflection, it's just opening my mind up to who I am and the things that I need to be better. And it's not about fixing. Like, I can tell you for myself, when I'm working with my clients, I'm not trying to, they don't need fixing. They
Yeah,
just
I love that you're saying that.
need, right? They just need an opportunity to, for a lot of times, to just to breathe. And there
Mm-hmm.
are times when I'll get on a call, a coaching call with one of my clients, and the whole time, the whole hour that we're together, I don't get a chance to say anything except for and how are you feeling about that? And at the end, when I ask them, how are you doing? How was that for you? They just say, thank you. Thank you for an opportunity for me just to be seen, and to get those scary monsters under the bed, just to kind of like look under the bed, talk about it, and then be able to move on, and then we can get to the next session and then get back on track with the things that that I said I wanted to accomplish, being the coachee, being the client.
Yeah.
But it's really, when I say coming home, it really is just coming home to yourself. They don't get an opportunity at other times to just reflect, think about who
Yeah.
they are, what the gaps are, who they want to become, um, even if it's just about feeling better in their own skin, right where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
love
find
that
that
you
you
said
find the
that
same?
about. Yeah, yeah, and then, look, I think I still see a lot of people don't really understand what coaching is, versus therapy or versus
Yeah.
mentoring even, there's still a lot of confusion out there. And so recently I had a client who actually said, thank you for this conversation and not trying to fix me, because she'd had so many conversations where that's exactly how she felt, is, she wasn't how somebody else wanted her to be. And
Right.
so I think that that's such an important thing, is that that understanding for people that, often the world of psychology and therapy was about fixing. It was about healing something that happened in the past. Whereas with
Right.
coaching, we're really working from this current situation that we're in to look at, well, what do we want instead? There's so much possibility
Yes.
in that,
Yes.
so much excitement and energy that comes from that. And of course, it's not black and white. There are therapists who have coaching skills and they bring coaching into therapy as well.
Yes.
The
Yep.
thing I think is it's just important for people to be aware of some of these core differences that can exist, and how coaching is different as an experience that really is so much more energizing, I find. For
Yes.
me, it's
Yeah.
incredibly energizing, both as a coachee and as a coach. And it unlocks so many more thoughts and opportunities that just didn't seem obvious before.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so it's
Yeah.
creative.
I remember when I was getting certified and going through the mentor coaching, experience, and I was always amazed by how, the questioning, right, that active inquiry would help help us, as if you're in the role of being the client, help you realize things that were like inside you all along. You just needed
Mm,
someone to like coach it out of you.
yeah.
And just helping a client to see things that are right in front of their face. Sometimes your mind is like 1,000 miles ahead of your body sometimes, and this is kind of like, just okay, everybody, let's just slow down. And it's helping them see what's right in front of their face. And it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that I didn't see that all along. And you just helped me put my glasses on, and now it's super duper clear. And
Yeah.
to me, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, and I think that in our busy world, as you were saying, a lot of the time, this is the only chance that people actually take to stop and look at what's really happening. And so, one of the clients I recently finished up with, I asked him, what is it that you found valuable in this process? And he said, really, it was about stopping and seeing what's going on inside of me, what's going
Yep.
on outside of me, what's really happening, because then that refresh was able to give him a better perspective about where he was investing his energy, his time, what was really the most important versus being automatic, right? Like a robot
Yeah.
in your day to day lives, right?
Yeah.
And this is bringing that humanity back into that control over what decisions we're making, what's really the most productive, right? And I see so many leaders in that problem solving pattern where they're constantly reacting, solving other people's problems, and firefighting. And this is where I've seen coaching for them make such a huge difference when they bring
Yes.
coaching into their world and start coaching their team members and raising their capability. It just frees up
Yes.
their time like it's a miracle.
Yes, yes, it's so
So
true. And then you're just making me think now that we have to be very careful and make sure that we're not doing the same thing to our clients, right? Where you're bringing them through like, okay, this is day, XYZ of our coaching agreement and our engagement, and we need to make sure that you are doing this and you're doing this and you're doing this. Like, I like to make sure that when I'm working with a client, that I meet them exactly where they are, and I give them exactly what they need for that particular day and that particular time. Well, I know
mhm,
that ultimately where they're looking to get to, we will get there. But if you don't work with that individual as a human being, then they very well may be stuck. And by the time you get to the end of the engagement, they could look at you and say, this was not worth my time, or
mhm.
investment. So I'm really, really very, very keen on making sure that I focus on that human being that is sitting across from me and who's trusting me to help them, find a way to wherever it is they're trying to get to.
Yeah, and this is such an important part of the power of coaching, right? Because it tracks change in people in that sense that if you are paying attention to what's changing, what's happening now, it actually creates so much opportunity. Whereas I find that people are so used to having a program to follow,
Yeah.
regimented follow, that this is almost an expectation that at times, and it ends up being a little bit confusing for people when they engage with a coach who has like a very specific outline of steps, for example, because I
Yeah.
see that being marketed, and then it's not necessarily reflective of the power of coaching and what's actually going to make sense for that person at that moment in time. So I was curious
Yes.
if you have any opinions or thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I mean, you have to meet people where they are, right? I could have one client who really, they need a list, right? They need a list of like, what is it that I'm doing? What is it you're doing? And so I provide that to them because I know that's how their brain works and that's what they need. And then I have another client where it's just kind of, we just get on our session and we're talking about whatever is going on in their life, in their work life at that particular time. And then the foundation of our program, knowing ultimately where we're trying to get to, we're both like, we're always checking back on that. And what's really cool is when you're like, you give them an opportunity to see like how far they have come on a journey of where they're going. Because a lot of times when you're in the midst of it, you don't even realize like that transformation, or whatever that transformation means to that particular client, that it's actually happening. And then it's like, oh my gosh, well then I don't know how I can possibly move on through the rest of my career without having a coach by my side helping me to kind of like be my best self. So I just think that if you're a coach, I don't know how I say this. I'll say it a different way from what I'm thinking right now. But ultimately, you have to be able to give the client what it is that they're looking for. You have to meet them where they are, and you have to take into account who they are as a person, in order to like, ultimately give them success at the end of your engagement. That's why the fit is so important. Those fit calls that we do, those discovery calls, because it's gotta be we gotta vibe as coachee and coach.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, I was just about to ask you, what do you think, because we're on this topic, what should people look for if they're trying to find a coach that is going to be a good match for them? What's your opinion?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I've never even really thought about that. That's a good one. I think it depends on the person. So one of the things that I ask in my intake form is like, what style of coaching do you like it to be? Collaborative? Is it more directive? Do you like a stronger touch? Do you like a weaker touch? And I ask that because, not because I can necessarily change my style. I mean, I really am who I am. I have to show up as my authentic self. And there have been times when I've been on a fit call and we both like, we might really like each other, but then I recognize that, what you need is not what I can give you. And then we can decide, to move on. Or the person might say, no, I need more of what you're saying. I need more of like, the type of coaching that you provide. Because if I'm meeting with someone and they say they need a fix, I want to know what steps I need to take. Give me A through B, C, D, E, and then I'm going to get all the way to Z based upon you. That's more than likely that's not the type of person that's gonna like want to jive with me, because I'm more fluid in my approach. So it's right. Just like every coach is not for everybody, and that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. That's why there's a variety, there's a rainbow of different coaches out there, different personalities, different styles, different things that we focus on, and that's good. I think it's great.
Yeah, and that's, a great opportunity for people to not be afraid of those kinds of discovery calls. I know if they've never had one, if they've never had a coach, it can be a bit intimidating to reach out for the first time. Yeah. Often, I have people reaching out when they truly feel like they cannot get across a certain gap in their career, or, something they're truly struggling with. And that's my thought, is you don't have to wait until you're struggling so much and in so much pain, and you've been stagnant in your career for 5 years to reach out to a coach. If you're considering growing and really just having support along that journey, it's okay to have a few discovery calls with coaches. And that's one of the beautiful things, is that doesn't cost anything. To get to know and see who you feel comfortable with, right? Because I think a lot of people are worried they're going to be, tried to be sold to in that call. That's where it's valuable to know that you can actually just ask for an opportunity to understand better what the services are. That's it. It doesn't have to be anything else beyond that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. People go car shopping, right? You go car shopping, exactly, you go from dealership to dealership, trying to figure out, look, feel, ride, all that kind of stuff, things that are going to feel good to you. You're going to feel good in that car. It to me, it really is no different. You have to find that right fit for what it is that you're looking for. And it's your life, it's your career, whatever it is you're looking for coaching for, it's yours. And
Yeah.
so you should not be afraid to not just shop around or whatever you want to call it, but talk to different people and find out what's going to work for you. And sometimes you just know. I had one client who met me, and like 10 minutes into the call, they were like, I don't need to look any further. We're good. And I thought he was saying like, we're done. Like, this is not a match. And he's like, no, no, no. I don't need to look any further. I found my coach. Let's go.
Awesome.
When
Yeah.
can we start? So it depends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sometimes really easy to be able to make that choice, right? And
Hmm.
it's something that I think as soon as there's that sense of trust, and you know that you can really um, express yourself honestly, right? And be transparent with someone, not have to hide anything. Because you mentioned that idea of bringing out some of these monsters under the bed. And I've recently seen people posting about those things, those fears that are creeping up in the current environment. I'm
Yes.
curious, what are some of these monsters that you've been seeing coming up for people recently in the last year?
A big monster, and I've been talking a lot about it lately, is imposter syndrome. That's a big one. And it's just, you look under that bed and you see yourself. And the monster is that nobody knows that I'm an imposter. I'm not
Mm,
real. The success that I've achieved is not mine, it belongs to other people. I have everybody fooled. I'm second guessing myself. I'm full of self doubt, and I am a fraud.
and
That
this is at the
is,
executive level?
sorry,
This is at the executive level?
the higher you achieve, the more you achieve, the bigger imposter syndrome becomes. And
Yeah.
it's usually the overachievers and high achievers that deal with it. Now, nobody would know, right?
Hmm.
Because they might be they look really confident. It has nothing. Just did a keynote on this the other day. It has nothing to do with confidence. It has to do with second guessing. It has to do with, having this idea of being perfect. It has to do with not seeing yourself the way other people see you.
Hmm.
And it's just believing those false narratives and beliefs that are running around in your head. I call it the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
but it's the elephant in your head taking up space, and depending upon what's going on, that elephant is having babies. All right, so and my elephant, I'm actually getting ready to do a post on this. My elephant, her name is Beatrice. All right, so
Ah,
I like to say that I'm a recovering imposter syndrome sufferer, but I don't know if when you achieve, if it ever quite completely goes away. Um,
what are the kinds
but
of
it's
like thoughts that you had occurring? I'm curious, because like I was actually surprised when I first started coaching executives how vulnerable they felt in their role, right? But it makes sense because it's often high stakes and decisions sometimes without knowing everything. It's not possible to know everything.
right.
What are the kinds of thoughts, worries that you had, showing up for you, or that you've had from clients?
It's really just not it boils down to just not seeing yourself the way other people see you.
Mm-hmm.
And then feeling like you just might have everybody fooled. Like if they only knew that I am making this up as I go along. And the fact of the matter is you're really not, right? I'll just speak for myself. I'm not making up things. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's when you lay your head on a pillow at night and you start thinking about what you've accomplished, what you've done, what there is to do, that you just allow that self-doubt to come in. Like, do I really know? Do I am I really am I really what people say? Am I really what people see?
Mhm.
And if you allow that noise to get louder, it can get so loud. Again, that elephant starts stomping around, and you have to find ways to like make that elephant sit in the corner, just be quiet. You're not allowed to roar right now. You need to be quiet while I go over here and
And
kick ass.
and so what have you found to be effective to, like for example, 360 feedback, getting actual feedback from people, has that helped to get that type of data?
Yeah, that helps. What helps more, and then like a broken record, it comes back to coming back to yourself, and quieting your mind, quieting the noise, and remembering why you're doing what you're doing. When you remember your why, it gives you stability. It helps you refocus on your purpose, and it helps you to focus on what really matters. And once you remember what your why is, then you have to protect it. I just talked about this with an amazing group of women entrepreneurs and business owners who came together as a cohort, and they may not have all heard the term imposter syndrome, but when I started describing what it feels
Mm,
like, you could just see the eyes open up. You can see the tears start to fall, as
yeah.
everyone was starting to recognize themselves. And let me tell you something: these are like powerhouse leaders running their business, doing millions of dollars of business, doing their thing, kicking butt. And yet the tears and the self-doubt and the wondering, it's still there. And we talk about it a lot about women, but men do suffer from it as well. Men
Hmm.
do have, we all have those doubts. We all have those doubts, but as long as you don't let them get in the way
Yeah.
of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I have seen that as well. And, definitely in the current environment, I'm seeing a lot of worry about role security, for an
Yes.
executive. Of course, to find another executive role, it can be really challenging, also in a
Yes.
culture that you want to be in. So there's a lot of
Lot to
those things
lose,
that I'm
right?
seeing popping up. Yeah, the more you have to
Yeah.
lose, the more worrying it can be, right?
Yep.
So I
Yep.
think it's good that we're having, this is one of the reasons I started this conversation series, is just to really start having some of these conversations in the open, and to invite other people in to understand they're not alone with whatever their journey is, their adventure, because it's an adventure that we're all on. Doesn't
Yes.
mean we have to do it alone.
Yes.
And
I
it's
love
so much
that. I love that.
better doing it together and really having support along the way. And so, for speaking, you mentioned, what kind of topics are you talking about? Imposter syndrome is one of them. What are some of the other topics that you're passionate about discussing with others?
Oh, I love talking about um, career journeys. I just did a talk recently at an insurance organization about designing your own journey and the importance of being present and being intentional about what it is that you're trying to accomplish for your life. Because if not, you would just be like a leaf, that's thrown into, like a river or stream, and just kind of like floating along without any real direction. And then just thinking about, again, I'm realizing that is a real theme to the work that I do, because it is about joy and happiness, and then finding that like happiness within yourself, coming home to yourself, whether that is about your career and the journey that you're going to be on for your career, whether that is about remembering your why, whether that is about mindfulness and how you can center yourself, or if it's about leading from that place of joy and happiness. It runs the gamut, but there's a thread that runs through, and it is about who you are, who you want to be, how you're going to show up, and the work that you're going to do on yourself, not to fix, not to fix, but to get where it is that you're trying to go.
I love that.